Hello, Monetization Nation. Welcome back to another episode with Don Markland. In the last episode, we discussed 4 secrets Don learned from his entrepreneurial journey, including prioritizing family, learning from our mistakes, monetizing social platforms, and leveraging reviews. In today's episode, we will discuss Don's book, The 4 C's of Accountability, Unleash Your Inner Hero, and how we can apply accountability to our own businesses. All right, let's shift. Let's go to your book, The 4 C's of Accountability. Unleash Your Inner Hero. So let's talk about accountability in business. What do you mean when you're talking about accountability in business?
So accountability is talked about a lot. It's a buzzword. I've never heard anybody say, I don't like accountability. You know, it's a terrible thing. Everybody knows it. The way I interpret it, it's actually not my quote. There's a guy named Bob Proctor that uses this quote. He said, accountability is the glue that ties commitment to results. That was his famous saying. And I loved that. The way accountability kind of came to me was, and I'd already shared some of this, right? Here I was in my mid-20s, the successful executive running this call center company, but I wasn't happy. I was really kind of struggling with my life, trying to make it all work. And that's when I created my program, The 4 C's of Accountability. And I created it for me. It wasn't for anybody else. It was about how I can be a better version of myself. It's totally selfish. And as I created that program, my life started to get better. I was 70 pounds overweight at the time, and I lost all this weight, and I started to see my family more. Things started to do better. My business started to grow. And it was shortly after that was when my wife got diagnosed with cancer, and we got through that whole thing. And I later on joined Bubba's, and we built that business. And all these things in my life started to get better, and I could attribute it to that 4 C's of accountability concept. I understood it, and I knew the more I lived the 4 C's, and the more I had other people live the 4 C's, the happier my life became. Because without accountability, without understanding and knowing what I was going to do, what I was going to say I was going to do, I couldn't drive consistent results in my life. And as I've done that, as in my last company where we grew up from 35 million up to 90 million, and even in my coaching practice now, that's where Forbes was kind enough to publish the 4 C's and put it on their podcast. And businesses all over the world, after they saw that, have started to reach out and say, hey, how can you teach me the 4 C's? And how can you put this in my business? And can you do these things? And that's where my wife said, why don't you write the book? And why don't you start your own business? And that's where it's all came about. That's what it is.
So will you take us through those 4 C's? Teach them
absolutely.
to us.
And I'd love to.
I'd love any stories or examples you can share as well.
Oh, yeah. So the 4 C's, it starts with 2 kind of overlaying principles. And then I'll walk through the 4 C's. So the first C, the first rule is accountability always starts with me. It always starts with yourself. I can't walk into a room and blame somebody else, right? I always have to look at myself first, no matter what. Okay, if it's IT's fault, and you and I both know it's always IT's fault, but I always have to start with myself. I got to look at and say, well, wait a minute. Even though maybe IT did screw up, but what did I do to contribute to that? Did I not communicate soon enough? Right. But for example, if you're married and, if I'm going to come home, if my wife said, pick up some milk on the way home, I don't get to come home and say, hey, I didn't have time. I have to come home and say, hey, I chose not to. Okay. Now you want some real accountability in your marriage? Come home and say that. Say, hey, I didn't get the milk, not because I didn't have time. I didn't get the milk because I chose not to. Okay. Right.
That's
everything's going to change.
Well.
Yeah. But you're going to have some real good conversation. Stuff's going to change. Okay. Stuff's going to change. Because guess what? Tomorrow you're going to get the milk. Yeah, right. Or you're going to go out right then and you're going to get the milk. Okay. Accountability starts with you. You don't get to blame time. You get to blame your choice. Right. So there's the first one. That's the first rule. Second rule is there are no egos in accountability. Anybody can hold you accountable. And I teach it in a metaphor. There's a, I have a lot of international clients. And so a lot of times I have to say this, I have to say there's this American sport called baseball. Okay. But you know what baseball is. Okay.
Yeah.
So in baseball, I throw a ball and you swing and you miss. That's a strike. And it doesn't matter if the umpire calls it a strike, or if the opposing player calls it a strike, or if a fan in the stands calls it a strike. It doesn't matter. A strike is a strike, and it's always going to be a strike. But so many times we get so butthurt or we get so frustrated when somebody else calls it a strike. And we say things like, hey, it's not your job to say where I screwed up. You get strikes too, or you have this problem too. You're a hypocrite. We go all wonky when people call us out, and we love to throw out their mistakes. And the second rule is there is no ego in accountability. Of course, they're being a hypocrite. Who cares? Right? Why do you care? Right? You still suck. You still messed up. Right? Doesn't change the fact you missed. So just tell them thank you. Hey, thanks for having the guts to say I made a mistake. I appreciate it. And I know you suck too. Let's suck together. Let's figure it out. And it hurts. It's hard to hear. It's hard to hear feedback. I know that. So what? You still swung and you missed. So get over it and regrip and try to swing again. Now, those are the two rules. The 4 C's, after you get those first 2 rules, the 4 C's are easy. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. First C is critique success. There's a guy named Sam Walton. You'll know Sam Walton. You've read about him, okay? The founder of Walmart. And he had a saying, which was do it better every time. He didn't believe in do it right every time because he knew you couldn't. He knew you'd make mistakes. He always thought do it better every time. And I love that. I love that concept. I was fortunate enough to go to the Disney Leadership Institute training down in Orlando because I live in Florida, which is God's country. Everybody should live in Florida. If you don't believe me, you're wrong. We have Disney World. No one else does. I just won the argument. That's how easy that argument is to win. Like, it's just one sentence.
And you know what? I agree with you.
Of course you do, because it's an easiest argument to win, right? It just takes one sentence. And down at the Disney Leadership Institute, right at the very beginning, they have a little exercise that we do. You put your hands up in the air. They say, everybody reach your hands up as high as you can. You stretch, stretch, stretch. And he says, now I want you to just stretch your hand half a centimeter higher. And then you do. You just go a little bit higher. And he said, that's all I expect you to do in this training over the next 5 days is grow just that little bit more. And he goes, that's what growth is. All it is. It's just a little bit every day. That's what
a great analogy. I love that.
Yeah. And that's what critique success is. That's what critique success is all about. Is when you go do something great, like you have a great podcast, like Monetization Nation, or you do that home run, that question you asked me, you nail something. Before you break your wrist, pat yourself on the back. Stop and grow. Stop and critique it. Surround yourself with people that are honest and say, hang on, Nathan, before you sit there and tell yourself how amazing you are. We all know you're amazing, but let's grow just a little bit. What did you do well? What can we duplicate? How can we get better next time? If you hit a 490-foot home run, how can we hit 492 feet next time? What can be a little bit better? Just before you get comfortable, how can we get a little more uncomfortable next time? And that way you never rest on your laurels. You're always just getting a little uncomfortable every time we critique our success. We don't rest on it. That's the first C. Okay. And boys, my
Mike
wife
Tyson had done that. I wonder how long he could have stayed as the heavyweight champion of the world.
You're talking to my soul now. I mean, I grew up watching that guy, and I still tell my kids he's the best there ever was at his prime.
He was so much better than anybody else. He was just light years above anybody else. But he just didn't continue to develop. It felt like he just quit.
That's right. He didn't critique success. He hit it and then stopped. Yeah, that's absolutely right. That's right. That's a perfect example of didn't keep critiquing success. Just hit it and was good enough. Right? Okay. Next one is correct failure. And I talked about this on my $900,000 mistake, right? When you make mistakes, don't be afraid to make mistakes. We don't punish mistakes. We correct them. You're going to make mistakes. I'm going to make mistakes. I make a lot of mistakes. When you make mistakes, we correct them. We find the logic. We find the assumptions we made. We pinpoint them and we correct them. We don't beat ourselves up and, you're an idiot, you're stupid. No. We correct the mistake and we move on. Okay. Because mistakes occur. They're always going to occur. We're humans, but we correct them and we roll. That's important. Okay. You have to create an environment that encourages effort, encourages failure, but encourages correction from those failure. That's the key. Too many environments punish failure. So people stop trying and they just try to be little tin soldiers and want to just do this one thing. No, I want lots of effort, lots of trying, lots of mistakes, but I want correction every time.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
I love that. That's so true.
The third C is celebrate growth. Okay. So now we're going to have some fun. The hardest thing in this life to do is grow. If you've been to the gym, and I've been to the gym, I think once, but when I've been to the gym, right, the hardest thing to do is put extra weight on the bar. Or if you're going to go do reps, like I'm going to do 12 reps of something, bench press, hardest one is the last rep, right? That's the hardest one. That's where the muscles rip and the lactic acid goes in and makes my muscle strong. That's the one that took the choice. And that's what we celebrate, not the 11 reps before it. We celebrate that hard thing, the growth thing, the uncomfortable thing, the things that were really difficult. Now, sometimes that's success, and I get that. It's blurry. And people ask me all the time, Don, why do you celebrate growth and not celebrate success? Because I believe every one of us were sent on this earth to be successful in whatever sphere of influence we were supposed to be in. Okay. Whatever we were sent here to be successful. Growth, though, is a choice. I don't celebrate meeting expectations. That breeds entitlement. So if you're expected to be successful, great job. But when you grow, you've chosen that. You choose that consistently. And I say celebrate that like crazy. Get on tables, go out to eat, have fun. When you do things that were hard for you, that were difficult or uncomfortable, go bananas.
I have a great example for you.
Please do it. I love this.
In the last few weeks. So I am a huge Phoenix Suns fan. Since the era of Charles Barkley, he converted me, and I've been a Suns fan ever since. And it has been a very lean.
It's a good ride.
11 years.
Yeah.
The last 11 years have been horrible, but I've stayed true and been a loyal fan. And this playoff series was interesting because they've done very well. Finally, after 28 years, we're finally in the finals again.
And you're going to win.
Yeah. And I hope they're going to win. I think we've got a good chance of winning. But what really stood out to me, our coach, when we won the first series in the playoffs, he didn't say, okay, we're immediately tonight going to look at tape for our next opponent and we're starting tonight. Like you hear that all the time from coaches. Yeah. He's had something very different. He said, tonight and tomorrow, we're going to just enjoy this and we're going to celebrate this. And I'm just encouraging our team to celebrate it. And you celebrate the growth of, they hadn't got through a playoff series in more than a decade that they'd never won a playoff series. That was a really big deal. And instead of always being focused on the next series, right, to stop and take a moment to celebrate.
That's right. It matters. The break matters. The rest matters. Right? People forget that, they all know about Roger Bannister, the guy that set the mile record back in the 1940s. Okay. But they don't realize that 2 weeks before he set the world record, he took a 2-week break. Okay. People don't realize, they think he trained all the way up. He took a 2-week rest to get his body ready because he knew breaks matter, rest matters. Okay. They always talk about his training routine and all this kind of stuff, but it's very well documented. He went, okay, now I got to rest. Okay. I have to be ready for this. And that's a perfect example. And by the way, your coach got robbed of Coach of the Year. Now I'm a Jazz fan. I'm a big Utah Jazz fan. Okay. But your coach got robbed Coach of the Year for the Knicks. Give me a break. Okay. Yeah. That was a Pop-Tart they gave that guy. And I was pretty upset about that. So you're going to win. You guys are going to win. Don't even get me started on the injuries, though, that you've been luckily dealt.
Yeah.
But that's a different
Stars are
conversation, different
aligning for us
podcast.
this year.
Yeah.
But if I went back to our previous years, like with Steve Nash in the Western Conference
Oh,
Finals and his things, like injuries always happen, and
yeah.
they've rolled against us some years, and this year they're definitely rolling in our favor.
Yeah. Look, I'll say this last see, my wife's a big Phoenix Suns fan. So we've been in a divided home. I'm a Utah Jazz fan. She's a Phoenix Suns fan.
Your wife sounds very smart.
Oh boy. Okay. So long time ago, you'll remember this. It was the Spurs, Phoenix Suns, and Robert Ory body check Steve
I
Nash.
remember that and being so frustrated. And they didn't even call a foul on it.
Yeah.
If I remember right.
Yeah. And so she to this day brings up this story and she was heated. She stood up, yelled at the TV. You can't bring up Robert Ory in this house without her saying, she's like, because Stoudemire got ejected.
I'm right there with her.
Yeah. Because he got ejected and he got suspended the next game because he stepped on the court. Yeah. Stoudemire got ejected and suspended the next game because he stepped onto the court, and that cost him the series. And so, cost him.
Now I remember.
Yeah, ultimately cost him the finals, right? And so she can't even bring up Robert Ory. She still gets mad.
Yeah, and Stoudemire should have stayed on the bench, right? That was something, going back to your first C, that was within his control.
That's right.
He had that. He should have focused on himself, but
so
you can't. It's hard to blame the guy.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, not to digress, but boy, we're big
back to our 4 C's.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Celebrate growth. And then the last C is my favorite, is crush mediocrity, right? Here in Florida, we have really big bugs, really, really big bugs. And I don't care how clean your house is, you're going to have big bugs. And when we see these bugs, we've got what's called this lonely flip-flop that, I don't know, got left out somewhere. And so it just hangs out. And when I see one of these bugs, I take the lonely flip-flop and I just crush this bug with everything that I've got. Because if you don't crush the bug with every ounce of strength you have, it survives. And I have a feeling this bug runs off and tells all of his buggy friends, hey, Don's a wimp. Come hang out, right? We got a place to stay. And the problem with that is that's how mediocrity is in our life. If you see mediocrity, and we're all infected with different types of mediocrity, whether it's our vices, whether it's shirking on certain behaviors, whether it's how we treat our spouse, I don't know, whatever it is. But whatever it is, we have it. And when we see it, if we don't crush it with everything we have, real passion, it comes back in droves. It comes back with all of his buggy friends and just hangs out. So you have to crush it like crazy. And this is a real true story of this. I had a client that I just talked this through this whole 4 C's thing. He and his wife were in real estate development. They were buying Airbnbs all over the country. And he was the business development guy. He was calling properties, and his job was business development. He was making a lot of calls and trying to buy properties, and his wife was the property manager. And he didn't like making calls. No surprise. Nobody likes making calls. And he was shirking on his responsibilities one day. And one night, at the end of the night, he always had to write down all of his calls, and he had to text me at night how many calls he made. Because look, the business is called Accountability Now for a reason. We get stuff done. Okay. And he was sitting in bed with his wife about to text me because he hadn't made any calls that day. And he realized that. And so he slapped his leg. He's like, ah! He was mad because he'd shirked all day. And his wife goes, what's wrong with you? Why are you smacking yourself? And he goes, I'm sorry, babe. I'm crushing mediocrity. And so then his wife grabbed his phone and she texted me from his phone. She goes, I just want you to know, Don, you're ruining my husband and my's bed life because he's crushing mediocrity right now. So that's a true story. That's what crush mediocrity is about.
Can you tell me how you have personally applied these 4 C's of accountability into a business that you've grown?
I've put the 4 C's of accountability in every business since I started it at Focus. But where it really took off was when I first joined Money Solver. Look, we were private equity held. We were about 36 million in size. And I was chief revenue officer and an owner. And we had a target from the private equity group that we had to get to 50 million in 3 years. We knew that. And if you've ever worked for private equity, they don't mess around. Like, you got to get to 50 million in 3 years. But day one, I put the 4 C's of accountability on the wall. I wasn't messing around with that. Everybody was going to learn this. Everybody in sales, everybody in IT, everybody. We were going to know what it was. We were going to train on this, and we were going to live these principles. And I mean, this wasn't the only thing we did. I mean, we had sales strategies, marketing strategies, and a lot of things, but we knew the 4 C's, and we grew to 90 million in 3.5 years. We blew out that 50 million target, and it was awesome. And it was because of that is why Forbes picked me up. And that's why they put it on their podcast, and they did all those things, which ultimately built the foundation of my coaching business because of that ride. And now it's been a part of, since my coaching business started, the 4 C's has been in over 35 businesses in the last 2.5 years as something that they implement and they practice, and in some of their SOPs as things that they write and that they do.
Thank you so much, Don, for sharing your stories and insights with us today. Here's some of my key takeaways from this episode. Number 1, accountability ties commitment to results. Number 2, accountability starts with us. Number 3, we can't let our ego get in the way of our accountability. And number 4, the 4 C's of accountability are critique success, correct failure, celebrate growth, and crush mediocrity. You can learn more about or connect with Don on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. You can also check out his podcast or his book, and you can find links to each of these sites in the blog post for this episode at monetizationnation.com. You can also get a free copy of my ebook about passion marketing and learn how you can become a top priority of your ideal customers at passionmarketing.com. You can also subscribe to Monetization Nation on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, our Facebook group, and on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for joining me for this episode, and I wish you success as you strive to use accountability to grow your business. Do you want to become a better digital monetizer? To receive great monetization stories and secrets, please go to monetizationnation.com and join free. And if you liked today's episode, please subscribe to the show and share it.